We are going very much from the big picture, the economy, the information community, the environment, to quite small, focused, targeted questions for you. I am also sure you're going to be quite patient. I don't actually speak for very long. I want you to do some thinking. So, early career researchers are in trouble. When we speak to them, they tell us about 3 really important issues that they are facing, far more than their predecessors were 20 years ago when I was an early career researcher before I dropped out, or 40 years ago when most of their mentors were studying for PhDs and so on. They are facing increasing job instability, very limited opportunities, and a significant and important lack of mentoring. So let's think a bit about those. Job instability. How long do you think the average postdoctoral contract is? 18 months. I have members of the Microbiology Society who have had to move 4 times in the last 6 years for different contracts at different universities. And they're willing to do that because there is incredibly high competition for these very short-term, quite poorly paid jobs. And they can't break out of this cycle because there are few opportunities for them to take another step in their career. Each of these projects that they're working on are very limited. They're very focused on one specific area. They don't have an opportunity to develop their own research focus, their own big picture. They also frequently find themselves in a position where their principal investigators are taking the credit for the work that they have done. And they're also having to balance very heavy teaching loads. Some of our members say that they are primarily research contracts, but they spend 30 hours a week teaching or engaging with students. So they have no opportunities to expand beyond the limited nature of the projects that they're working on. And then that's all compounded by a lack of mentoring. There are a few formal schemes, but senior academics who should be helping these early career researchers to navigate the complex world that they found themselves in also have very busy lives and an awful lot of things to do and don't really have the time to dedicate to helping their junior colleagues. This is not something that we as a scholarly communications community can really do a great deal about. But we have to ask ourselves whether we're helping the situation. We talk a lot about open access, and I'm going to get the first Plan S name check in here. And it is a factor of our lives. Open data, open scholarship are really important. But as publishers, are we actually helping early career researchers, who, let's face it, are the ones who do the bulk of the work, to get this done right? Or are we just creating policies and saying, this journal now requires open data, and leaving them to figure out how to make that happen? We reject papers all the time. It happens. Are we helping those early career researchers who, again, are generally the people who are having to go away and redo the work and reformat the paper and resubmit it to another journal? Are we helping them by sending them off with some peer reviewers' comments to another journal that won't factor in those peer reviewers' comments, oh, and by the way, doesn't like the referencing format that you've used? Or are we making their lives harder? Are we helping them when we say to early career researchers and to others, here's how you can promote your work. Look, there's Kudos over here, there's Twitter, there's LinkedIn, there's whatever you want to do. Or are we just piling more burdens onto people who are already really stretched? So I've spoken for about 5 minutes. We're all very busy people. I'm now going to ask you to take 10 minutes to talk with the people on your table about what you do within your organisations that might be adding to the burden of early career and other researchers, and what we as a community and as technologists within the scholarly communications community might be able to do to slightly reduce some of the burdens, if not necessarily helping with the job instability.
Okay. I'm going to be telling a story later this afternoon. I'm talking about diversity and innovation. And one of the stories involves a bloke who has a Hungarian determinant. And that's the point, is that so I'm listening there going, just the advantage of science requires people to do that. But if they're doing it purely to chase a three-letter acronym and then become part of the institution themselves, that's the feedback. Yeah?
Okay.
I think there's a bit of a...
I'm going to try and get everybody's attention now by shouting really loudly. So I've heard some really interesting bits of discussion meandering around the room, and I would very much like, because we've got 15 minutes before, I think it's coffee next, please somebody tell me it's coffee next, I would very much like for you guys to share with each other what you have been discussing. So I'm going to start in the bottom corner there because I can see you guys really easily.
So I was talking about what we're doing at IOP Publishing and being brutally honest about what the experience must be like for an early career researcher coming onto our site and trying to submit and having to step through pages and pages of legalese to describe how they cover their copyright, and their native is probably not English. And so the barriers to entry are not only that they don't really understand publishing, but they don't really understand English, and they certainly don't understand the legal framework that we've put around the entry into our publishing world. So I think the barriers are really strong, and we are trying to do things about it, and because we're part of a learned society, we're able to take some of the funding that we get from our society to put that back into the research world as opposed to the publishing world, which I guess a lot of the main commercial publishers can't do, but there's so much more that could be done. And we talked a lot about some of those initiatives that are trying to level the playing field a little bit.
We just try to apply things from the technology world, from the IT world. It may or may not work, so this may be dumb or not, but we thought about early peer reviews, so just like you would, so someone's checking in a small piece of code, so go to my colleague here who will review it, point out any issues, and actually learn themselves if I've done something they haven't seen before. So that way we thought that could be a helpful practice, so early peer review and constant peer review, not waiting to the end of the process, but experimental.
I'm going to move over to TNF now because I know that we've got TNF over in this corner. So you guys were also talking a little bit about sort of working with authors and how to better educate them.
Talking about a project we have going on in TNF about the instructions for authors, and I've been doing a lot of research within my role as a product analyst about what the life of an author is, and realizing, and you spoke, just how stressful and how publishing is an afterthought, or almost in addition to all of the other things that they have to do. So making a really clear, almost like a checklist of what they need to do. But I think what is hard is getting certain editorial colleagues on side for some sort of standardization. And that's kind of where we are at the moment.
Stick your hand up if you want to volunteer, otherwise I am just going to be, there we go, Hendrik at the back, otherwise I am going to be picking on people.
I got it.
Yeah, hi. I'm Hendrik Wittkow from Sage Publishing. And we had a very good discussion here, and we started off by saying that publishers can, of course, engage with scholars on all sorts of levels. Because, of course, we want to bind the scholars to our company, but also we want to support them. Definitely there's a buy-in for everyone. We are, for example, teaming up with Cactus Communication on giving scholars help creating content, finding it easier to work on discoverability and such like. But also in terms of technology, we were talking about chapters. You can dissect the content easier these days. Technology can support this so that you don't have to, when you write a huge monography, then an individual paragraph can be still dissected these days and monetized, and then it helps the scholar to be easier discovered. What else do we have? There was, I think Christian made a good point saying that, of course, by and large, the community and publishers are relying on funders and organizations and policymakers. And so we have to be just aware that there's a certain limit to what we can do. And America, you pointed out quite rightly, is much more supportive. So again, being aware of in what areas there's a quicker way for academics to be discovered, to make their content available and to move up. That was more or less it.
Who would like to go next? All right, I'm going to pick on Ian.
What did we cover? So, bingo card time, impact factors came up in our discussion. So what I thought was interesting, it's actually quite relevant that you have a circle there. It's almost there's a circular problem because the credit the researchers want is the credit which the system gives them at the moment through the journals with single word titles, which do have very high rejection rates. And because so much is placed on that incentive of publishing in that top journal, that researchers will nevertheless crawl over hot burning coals in order to get that credit on their CV because they assume it's going to give them the job stability and rewards that they want. So, that was part of the discussion. Others feel free to chime in. So, and we did sort of get into how technology can make those pains greater. So, anecdote, I was speaking to a researcher that had 60 files, supplemental files they wanted to upload. They were using Editorial Manager, and that was hours of their life wasted uploading files, creating metadata for them, which probably then gets thrown away at some point and then remade by a vendor. And these are, but that's a very specific thing, but that's a real chunk of time where better technology or ways of working could improve things.
I think the one other thing that we mentioned as well was we were talking a little bit about FAIR and the accessibility and access to the research work itself, not just the output, so maybe providing more support to make that discoverable, which would then maybe lessen the burden on the focus of that output and put more emphasis on the quality of the work that's actually happening itself.
How long have I got? We've got SSRN over here.
So we were talking, as we're mostly from SSRN, we've got some else there as well. We were talking about generally working papers, preprints, and just the idea that you get early exposure, early feedback. And on SSRN, we work with the Lancet and Cell Press and a number of other journals where we expose papers under consideration early again, so you can just submit your paper straight away. It's on the site, getting exposure, distribution as well. So just that, I think it helps the researchers getting that early feedback while they're going through the peer review process. But we were also talking about sort of the other side of it, whereby potentially during that process, potentially your co-authors won't get all the credit because you're not, during the submission, going to be submitting all the information you would during the peer review process. And then we started talking about Sci-Hub as well, because it's a big thing for us at Elsevier, and content protection, and how that impacts the researcher as well. Does that help or hinder them? So that's another interesting point we'll talk about.
I am really having to pick on people, aren't I?
There was another interesting idea down here about the creation and destruction and recreation of metadata. That's already come up. Do you want to tell us about the discussion?
Yes, hi, I'm Astrid with iOS Press. We were talking about submission systems and how they are often clunky, and it takes a lot of time for researchers. And then they have to go through the instructions to authors, which they probably don't read. And by the time they come to us with their paper, they may have been already to some other publisher, so they have to start all over again. So we were also thinking of maybe exchanging articles amongst journals, and then sending in the peer review comments along with that. But on the other hand, maybe then the other publisher wants to start with a clean slate, so I don't know if this will be a viable option.
So there's a thing called the Neuroscience Peer Review Consortium.
Yeah, I was
that does
talking
something
about
along those
that
lines.
earlier. We are part of that, yeah. But honestly, we use it, but it doesn't come up too often that it gets to be published in another journal in this type of alliance.
Hi, we were talking about, I'm with the Journal of the Norwegian Medical Association. We were talking about, we are in the lucky position, we are able to provide quite a bit of services to authors in creating tables, creating graphics, cleaning up manuscripts and so forth. But we have had a push in our organizations to simplify things as much as we can, dropping old, really demanding language standards and everything like that, and having a focus on this. And there's so much to do. I think it's the easiest thing is to add on demands and bureaucracy and insurances and always talk about quality and quality. And the most difficult thing in an organization is actually to say, yes, 90% is good enough here, and to move on and simplify the life of other people and the authors especially. I think we just need to be brave, and we need to think outside our spheres and not create our own standards and try to simplify life as much as possible. I came from the media industry, and I find scientific publishing incredibly complex, and just understanding all the standards and organizations and all the possibilities as you can participate in. And we pass on these burdens and demands to our authors if we're not careful.
It's an interesting thought. Apply the Pareto principle to submissions. 80% is good enough.
I was waiting for someone else. Actually, there's one thing that I shared. It's not a Brill thing, so I'm over from Brill. But we recently got a demo from a big organization who developed a digital-first book production system, and where it appeals to us, and I come to the young researchers in a second, is that it addresses the problem of aggregating invited chapters and getting them in. And if the person who is charged with managing that process is a more junior person, and so far has to remind their senior colleagues, maybe even their boss, please submit your invited chapter to my edited volume, it's always a very awkward situation. So this system, next to many other benefits, gives a dashboard where people need to log in. They write their invited chapters in that environment, and they see how much they are behind. And they are also seen by others how much they are behind. So if the super duper professor is the last person in the row, it will be obvious to everybody, and there are no embarrassing emails are necessary. So I think what I understood from the people who use the system already, especially the younger people, love it because it takes away that burden. So it's a technology gain for younger participants in the system.
Anyone else volunteering? So what I'm hearing is an awful lot of people talking about effectively format-free submissions. I don't think that goes far enough. I think we could do an awful lot more. I think we can find ways to say to early career researchers, we can make a paper out of your lab notebooks. We can make data papers out of your data sets. Dryad already do this. We can do a lot of the heavy lifting for you on your authoring side, on the recognition side, on finding ways to get credit as co-authors, but also as peer reviewers. I don't know how many of you have had experience of being in academia, but I know for certain that my PI used to palm off his peer review requests onto me and then claim the credit for them in his own name, which is crazy. We have many mechanisms now that would allow us to give early career researchers credit in their own names. And I don't think we have any solutions right here, right now, but I would encourage you to listen through today, and when you go back to your offices, talk to your technology teams, talk to your early career researchers and find out what their single biggest bugbear is. 90% of them will say editorial manager, telling you no. But find out what their biggest bugbear is and see what you can do and how to easily do it that will fix just one of the little problems that takes away some of the bigger burden from these big 3 problems that they have every day.